Six has a lot of fundamental changes to his kit in this patch, and I think we get a sense for that by looking at the very first thing they changed in the patch notes, his dash heavy. Previously, this dash heavy used to launch into an automated follow-up on the second hit. On block, it wouldn't come out, and you'd be -8. On hit, Six would launch the opponent upwards in a mostly unusable state. You could definitely get some aerial extensions here in some of his combo routings, thanks to the opponent being launched a little bit higher from a standard position. The damage was also dispersed between 500 on the first hit and 1,000 on the second hit, totaling 1,500. This move also wasn't cancelable. So you basically use this move just as a combo filler in some instances. This could have some pretty strong neutral implications thanks to the fact that this was higher priority than a heavy normal. It would come down to timing more or less. But as you can see here, Six could pretty consistently beat this far heavier Grands in this particular demonstration. Additionally, the second hit used to increase your Skybound arc gauge, adding about 5. Let's take a look at how Dash Heavy has been reworked. Now, only the first attack will come out. On hit and on block. You also notice that the recovery was increased by 2 frames, so now the attack is -10 on block as opposed to -8. This isn't too big of a deal, though, as the move is now special cancelable. Meaning that Six can go into his pressure from this. There's a lot of potential options here, as well as some new combo routing. It also does mean that you don't get the additional launch height by using this against airborne opponents when you do combo them. Now, the second attack, which does 0 damage, the first hit now doing 1,200 damage instead, is only going to come out on a counter hit. Additionally, instead of launching the opponent, it leaves them grounded. It doesn't really look like that you're able to advance on them and get a close heavy normal or close medium normal. So 6 players will have to explore what kind of confirms they can get from this here. Because of all these new properties, the move's clash level has been reduced, so now it will clash with heavy normals. There's a lot of changes to Jumping U as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at the old properties. It used to be 24 frames startup that left the opponent grounded on hit. You'd have to space this out to get plus frames. And even then, it really wasn't enough for you to pick up any sort of extension here. You namely just got to take your turn. On block, you could be 0, or with a spaced out hit, +2 in some instances, with the distance from the opponent being relatively close. Additionally, you also used to have 18 frames of mid-air hit stun. Nothing that was really workable for you here, but enough to give you some plus frames to advance on the opponent. Now let's take a look at the new behaviors of JU. It's faster now, coming out of frame 18 instead of frame 24. You'll also see that it launches the opponent on hit, so if you're successful with this, you'll be able to press your offense with something like a meaty 6XL. Against airborne opponents, there's 4 frames less of hit stun, which you couldn't really pick up combos with it before, so you're probably not going to get that either here. In addition to that, the pushback on block has been increased. You're -1 and give up your turn, but this should be pretty safe for you to play some RPS. Let's take a look at Demon Step now. It's a plus on block fireball. Previously, you could not cancel into this from normals. Demon Step can now be canceled into from a normal attack. Meaning at a given moment, you have an opportunity to leave a gap in your pressure to then reset it. Fairly novel. It's worth noting that you cannot do this from crouching U or from dashing heavy. New Perspective, the held version of Six's unique attack, also has the same change to it. Previously, you couldn't cancel into this from normals. Like Demon Step, you can now cancel into New Perspective from a normal attack. However, you'll also know that the recovery has been increased, so instead of being +2 on block, it's now -2. So this also means that in neutral, if you deliver yourself to the enemy like this, you're no longer plus in these situations, instead being negative, so this does hurt its application as a neutral tool. There's other changes as well to the recovery of New Perspective, as well as to the mid-air hit stun. Previously, on hit, you were +6, allowing you to link a close light. This would be pretty nice in case you use this fireball and caught the opponent. If they blocked it, then you were +2 on block, allowing you to start your offense. This was a pretty great way for 6 to just rush down the opponent and to skip neutral, granted if the opponent wasn't checking his fireballs correctly. In addition to that, if you got an airborne hit, you had 30 frames of hit stun to work with, allowing you to link a close heavy. So again, 6 was able to pretty much throw this move out without really having to put too much thought into it, at least given some situations and matchups. Additionally, because of that recovery increase, it means you can no longer get combos from this. If you hit the opponent teleport in, you're only +2. Let's get into the next set of changes for 6, which revolve around his 6 claw execution. So for starters, there's a bug fix where you weren't able to perform follow-ups if you were connected late with the move, so that should be addressed now. In addition to that, against airborne opponents, the hitbox is expanded upwards when hitting a foe at a height, allowing him to more easily connect through his combos and not have the opponent fall out. Now let's get into 6 claw execution light. Previously, the startup used to be 13 frames startup on the first hit and 19 frames startup on the second hit. Now the light version of 6 claw execution is faster by 1 frame on both hits. So the first attack comes out of frame 12 and the second attack comes out of frame 18. This doesn't all of a sudden open up new combo routes for 6, as everything worked before that I tested. I imagine that where this matters is going to be in his pressure sequences. I didn't actually examine this in the old footage here, but I wanted to demonstrate that of all of your close normals, you're able to true string into this, as well as your triple strike. If a 6 player can let us know if that was the case in the previous patch, I'd appreciate it. Otherwise, I think it's just a consistency buff. Now let's take a look at the medium version of 6 claw execution. There's been changes to travel speed and distance. Previously, it was relatively stubby before. In addition to that, 6 would travel at the same rate regardless of his proximity to the opponent. Now let's see the new travel distance and speed of the medium version of 6 claw execution. It's fairly faster, but do note that in order to keep the behavior up close the same, 6 will deaccelerate when he reaches the opponent. It's just naming there for consistency. You should be able to more effectively poke with this move and transition into your Rekka pressure. Light Archdemon Kick has a change to its travel speed and distance. Previously, you could always pretty much guarantee to hit the opponent with it if you ever connected, even at a max range 6 claw execution, but you would be left a little bit spaced out, and maybe this made it a little too safe from these instances. Now let's take a look at the increased travel speed and distance of the light version of Archdemon Kick. On block, this should mean it's slightly worse for 6, as you're closer to the opponent in -4, but it should mean slightly more corner carry and consistency in your combos. Light Snake Bite has a similar buff to Light Archdemon Kick. Previously, at max range 6 claw executions, the move had a chance to whiff. This would be very unideal. So what about the new travel speed and distance? It still whiffs at max range, unfortunately, but this should happen less often, I think. Now let's take a look at the buffs to Medium Snake Bite. But in order to understand why they buffed it like this, we have to see how it behaved previously. The difference between using Light Snake Bite and Medium Snake Bite wasn't much in the previous patch. You were +2 off of the 23 frame startup Light Snake Bite, versus being +3 from the 30 active frame Medium Snake Bite in the previous patch. This wasn't a combo tool at all for 6, as there's not really any context of which you can combo into this attack. Now, let's take a look at what this means. This is a pressure reset tool for 6. After 6 claw execution, you are incredibly negative, so the opponent could try and take the turn away from you and punish you if you didn't go for any of your follow-ups. Snake Bite was your way of resetting pressure. However, if the opponent chose to mash against you, Light Snake Bite here would lose. So if they attacked you with the crouching normal, then you simply lost outright. And if you try to attack with the slower medium snake bite, the opponent would actually be able to block in time. You would still be able to take your turn here, but you didn't get a punish opportunity here, which you would like to take advantage of. So now let's take a look at the new properties of medium snake bite. Some of them make it more in line with the light version, while other properties make it unique very much to itself. The startup has been decreased from 30 frames to 23 frames, so it now has the same startup time as the light version. This means that it doesn't have any new combo utility, since both versions don't combo. However, where things get very much interesting is going to be the jump height prior to the attack. It's been dramatically increased, almost to a comical level. 6 goes flying in the air. You'll also note here that instead of being plus on block, 6 is now -4. There's a few more active frames of the move as well to make sure it doesn't whiff on crouching opponents. In this case, 6 is actually +1, so the opponent is encouraged to stand block against 6 here to make this hit earlier and to make him -4 on block. However, I think the intended change for this move, or the reason why they did it, is so that it actually is able to defeat an opponent's fuzzy mash. As you can see here, you also get a ground bounce on this move. And with it, you're able to extend combos. You will note that the combo limit does increase going from 0 to 2 here, so your conversions are going to be a little shorter from this move. Rather frustratingly, at least when testing this against Gran, it seems that a standing jab is going to be able to beat this attack still. That's with an immediate mash. Maybe you'll be able to frame trap against a mash with a bit more of a delay to it. It's a very weird and interesting set of changes here for 6, and I'm curious to see how 6 players are going to incorporate this into his kit. Again, I think this definitely is here to make it so that crouching mashes aren't going to be safe, and you can actually get punishes and confirms for that, making the opponent more likely to respect your 6 claw execution pressure. Now let's look at changes to the medium version of Charge Thunder Flash. Previously, if 6 was able to successfully perform this move, he would just jump straight up into the air. This meant that there wasn't a lot of neutral utility for this move. And up close, there wasn't much utility either, since you'd rather just have a counterattack follow-up come out to punish the opponent, knock them down, and allow you to take your turn. Now let's take a look at the new properties of the charged version of Medium Thunder Flash. It will now track to the opponent after you jump to them. In theory, this looks nice as an approach tool, but as you can see here, 6 is no longer able to block in the air after he uses this move, so the use cases are very situational. Maybe there's going to be some matchups or some special techniques that 6 will like to use this to approach and actually get his offense started, but against some other spacings where I think this move could be effective, it's looking a little dire. I'm curious to see what use cases players are able to find. Now let's move on to Gate of Demons, and the various versions have some different changes to them. So let's start with the light version. Previously, this move could be a little difficult to hit against crouching opponents thanks to the hitbox. On block, it would work fine, and you would be -3 previously. On hit, though, is where things got a little ugly. As you can see here, 6 would just jump right over them in the previous patch. Against a standing opponent, things would work out pretty fine. You'd be -4 thanks to the fact that the opponent is blocking sooner, and so you get less recovery frames here to work with. On hit, you wouldn't get a combo here either, but you were +0 on block, so you didn't really use it for this particular instance. More often than not, you're using this as some sort of fireball poke at very close ranges. On counter hit as well, the situation wasn't that great. You were +2 in this situation against a standing opponent. If you managed to hit a crouching opponent, you'd be +4. But again, having that hit and being able to do something with it would be rather difficult. So let's take a look at the changes to Light Gated Demons. The hitbox for the first 2 active frames has been expanded downward to make it easier to hit crouching foes. You should more reliably be able to end your pressure. In addition to that, with the rebound distance changing, 6 is no longer -4 in this situation, but -1, opening up opportunities for him to RPS with Thunder Flash. However, it's important to note that against a crouching opponent on hit, it's not like all of a sudden that this move is going to be linking here. So this is namely just a buff to his pressure, nothing with any advantages on hit, at least against a crouching opponent. Addition to that, we have to take a look at the adjustments made to its behavior on counter hit. The advantage frames have been reduced, and combined with that change, he now is only +2 instead of +3 on counter hit. Of course, given the spacing and everything else like that, you can be +4. So you're still not going to be finding any sort of new pressure sequences here or combos. The medium version of Gated Demons has a lot more going on with its changes. Previously, it was 29 frame startup. Very, very slow, and you didn't get too much reward for it. You weren't able to pick up combos from this anywhere on screen. If you got a counter hit, then you did. This is pretty much you going for a guard cancel bait of some kind. If the opponent blocked the move, you'd be -1. So this is a fairly safe option, and you often see 6s weave this into their pressure. Again, as a pretty natural throw shimmy, or as, again, an attempt to deal with a brave counter on a read. Other properties of this move, thanks to its old values, included this. It traveled relatively far for itself, but based on the height in which you performed this, the land and recovery on hit and whiff could have been a little bit different. If you space this out, you get varying results. So From a distance, you could be +1, +2, versus up close, where you could be -1. Again, creating some odd situations where both players had to be aware of what the spacing was to then determine who was advantageous and how you would be able to take the turn. Additionally, on whiff, it had pretty fast recovery, being 14 frames on that. Now let's take a look at the medium Gate of Demons changes. The startup has been dramatically reduced, going from 29 frames to 20 frames. You're now actually able to combo in this move from a triple strike sequence, giving it some nice meterless knockdown utility for 6 in case he doesn't have access to 6 claw execution, or if in case he prefers this sort of knockdown. You'll also note that the launch height has been increased. You don't get any combos from this. This should just mean that you get some more consistent and better Oki using this tool. In addition to that, the travel distance has been slightly reduced, namely because of the decrease in startup, so it doesn't travel as far. The landing recovery on hit and whiff has also been standardized to be 16 frames. Basically what this means is that no matter where you connect with the opponent, 6 should always be -4. So there's no more spacing this move out, and using it to be plus on approach. I can't get this down to -3 on block. But still, that should mean that I'm always giving up my turn instead of sometimes stealing it. Ultimate Gate of Demons has a nice change to it. Previously, 6 would travel at the same speed regardless of his distance to the opponent. So if he was hitting a crouching opponent, this would whiff on them. Namely because he would just fly right over their heads. Now with the change of the travel speed, 6 will deaccelerate when he's close to the opponent. So this should allow him to actually connect against an opponent and hit stun when they're crouching. There's some potential max damage punish routes that 6 could use with this. It does work off of a close heavy. However, it's not going to work after a triple strike sequence or after a dash heavy. It will work after dash heavy if you get a counter hit. I'll leave it to 6 players to explore combo potential with it. Now let's get to the airborne versions of Gate of Demons. The light and heavy versions have a couple adjustments here. Previously on hit, the light version will launch the opponent off the ground, making follow-ups very difficult to get. In addition to that, it would only add a single point to the combo limit. So let's get into the changes. On hit, it will now cause a ground bounce. The patch notes say this to make follow-ups easier. In the corner, it's pretty easy to get close heavy. Mid-screen, however, I find that 6 is lacking in pickups here. 2U doesn't work. None of your far heavy normals do. You don't have enough time to get a dash normal in. And ultimate 6 claw execution can work, but you have to get a very delayed hit here. So much so that it almost begs the question of why put out an attack at that point in the jump in. But we'll see if there's some uses to it. The combo limit value has also changed. Instead of starting at 1, it now jumps it up to 3. So you should get shorter combos off of this move. In addition to those changes, there's also been some other changes to the Gate of Demons mid-air version in order to make it a little more risky. The rebound height has been adjusted when you whiff the move, as well as the throw window being adjusted for 6. So previously, 6 could use this, whiff it, and have quite a bit of fallback distance away from the opponent. With that extra bit of time, it could be hard for the opponent to actually recognize what happened, assuming they didn't commit to an anti-air in the first place. And if they try to run up a throw 6 more often than not could just tech the throw as soon as they got close enough. The rebound height when you whiff in midair has been decreased. So 6 should be closer to the opponent, meaning that they don't have to travel as far in order to punish him. The patch notes do say that when used near the ground, the window where the foe can ground throw 6 has been increased. However, you can still pretty much tech this from what I can test. So I don't really see too much of a practical change here, unless there's something I'm missing. Next up is the heavy version of Gate of Demons, which sees a nerf. The projectile duration used to be 73 frames. So you could use this from nearly full screen and control a lot of space, stopping the opponent from approaching you. Now let's see the reduced projectile duration. As you can see, it doesn't reach the ground anymore. It now lasts for 41 frames instead of 73. Meaning that it's not as great as a fireball from higher ranges. So a small nerf here for 6, but he's a fighter that's able to get into close range, so I don't think this will affect him too much. And now we're going to get into some very big changes for 6 here, and it comes to empty hand. Unfortunately, this first change, which is universal, applying across all 4 versions of the move, I'm not going to be able to showcase this. The hitbox is expanded upward, meaning that these should be able to catch the opponent from higher altitudes more consistently. But now let's get on to changes I can demonstrate. Previously, the light, medium, and heavy version of these attacks didn't have any iframes during the dive motion of the move itself. So the opponent would be able to see this and be able to anti-air if you committed to the dive. These lack of iframes effectively meant that the only version a 6th player would use a neutral like this, outside of like maybe just fiending for something else, would be to use the EX version, the one that they could feint. Now, the light, medium, and heavy version of Empty Hand have iframes during the dive motion, and their clash level has been increased. So now you can no longer 2H these. This is pretty impressive, as 6 now has a way to just jump at the opponent for some damage onto them. However, the moves have been adjusted somewhat to make sure that this isn't completely broken, so let's take a look at the new properties. To offset these changes with the new iframes, the light, medium, and heavy version have some extra adjustments to them. Let's go through the light and medium first, since they actually share the same set of changes. They have increased landing recovery, a change to their lateral knockback and launch height, as well as a decrease to their mid-air hit stun. Previously, if you're able to use these at the proper spacing, 6 could be +4 at the best case scenario. This would namely be if you struck the opponent at their feet. If he was closer to them, then it'd be more disadvantageous. Additionally, the old air hit stun used to be 30 frames. If you caught the opponent with the right version of the right spacing, you could pretty reliably pick up some combos, but this was again extremely finicky, at least in my testing. Now for the behavior on hit. Previously, if 6 was able to connect with this, the opponent would be pushed back a bit and at a low height, making it difficult for 6 to pick up hits here. If you hit them in the corner with the light version, you would be able to link a close light. Almost a similar case with the medium version. But again, the spacing had to be very precise. Now let's take a look at the new block stun thanks to the changes in land recovery. Both the light and medium version have 4 more frames of recovery. So instead of being able to make these plus on block, 6 is now pretty consistently +0 on block. He's also -4 off the medium version. If you space it out, you can make it +0. But generally speaking, 6 now is going to be giving up his turn or RPSing defensively as opposed to being able to force his way in. So this is a small price to pay for the fact that he now has iframes on his move and perhaps will be more incentivized to use any other version besides the EX one to approach the opponent. And if he does commit to the EX version, well then, he is still +1 on block. Now let's take a look at the new mid-air hit stun, going down to 22 frames. So you lose 8 frames of hit stun here, which generally means that if you do catch an airborne opponent, you don't get a combo. So a little bit of a nerf there. Now let's take a look at the new knockback on hit. The lateral knockback has been decreased, so the opponent is closer to you, and the launch height has been increased, so now they're going to be launched higher in the air. This is namely here just to ensure that you're able to maintain offense after hitting with these moves. As even in the corner, you're not really able to get any sort of combo pickup, even with good spacing. So yeah, I think the moves now are going to be able to be pokes and neutral, but I think they're going to still be fairly risky. I think that people are still going to be using the EX version just because it is plus on block, plus the other changes to it make it more attractive. As for the heavy version of Empty Hand, it's namely improved in many situations. Previously, it would launch the opponent on a grounded hit. You could get pickups in the corner with it. Additionally, there's been adjustments to its hit against an airborne opponent. Previously, if you managed to catch an opponent with this, it could be tricky to pick up confirms. Instead of launching the opponent, now EX Empty Hand will leave them grounded. And force crouching. You're +6 here, meaning that you can link a close medium. The timing is fairly tight, so if you prefer to go for a close light, I wouldn't blame you here, just to give you some more leniency in your pickups. Additionally, against an airborne opponent, the lateral knockback has been decreased while the launch height has been increased. Meaning it should be easier for you to pick up combos. With all these changes, the light and medium version do have some utility based on the spacing that you want to go for, but I still think that the EX version of Empty Hand is the go-to version for it. And now, it's just purely invincible on block. Purely invincible, +1 on block with a ground combo launcher sequence for you. And here you can see that depending on your spacing, you can even make it more plus. So I think this move is going to be particularly obnoxious for players who have to fight against 6 going forward. With all that said, is there still some counterplay to Empty Hand? Yes, if you have an invincible reversal option. If you don't have this kind of an option, or if it's tied to meter, well then 6 has a lot of reasons to go ahead and throw this move out at you. The last change to 6 comes to his 6 Runes Enlightenment install super. Unfortunately, I won't really have a great demonstration for this, but the patch notes say that they've expanded various hitboxes during this super to make it harder for the after-image attacks to whiff. Maybe it's a nice quality of life improvement, but I don't know if this is going to be enough to make 6 players actually engage with this super, as they tend to just save it for Skybound art or Super Skybound art. That's pretty much it for the 6 changes. There's a couple of very weird and interesting things going on in here. Not really what to make of the dash heavy changes, if it's overall a net nerf to some of his combo routes that like to incorporate using dash heavy, namely when he launched you in the corner to then get extensions off of it. But having the ability to cancel it into plus on block special moves or to go into a 6-clock execution does seem like a fair enough trade-off for him in order to utilize the move. Plus, it's a much more safer poke now since, instead of being -8 and punishable on block, he can now just threaten to cancel into a special move and continue his offense from it. The other changes going on for him as well just opened up some new ways for him to generate pressure, such as canceling a normal into a demon step to take his turn all over again. I'm curious to see what happens with the changes to the medium version of Snakebite, if it's going to actually give him a way to use that tool when it comes to his pressure sequences, as well as what people make of the medium Thunderflash changes. Gaia Demons seem to be reworked just a little bit, making sure that he's not able to abuse those for as much plus frames. As well as the fact that now his Empty Hand is just basically a full screen neutral skip, at least from the medium and the EX version, does seem kind of interesting, at least for calling out the opponent. I think that 6 could have more reaction tools to try and punish the opponent for setting up zoning, giving him better matchups into characters like Matera, Onrey, or anyone else who's pretty reliant on controlling the space from mid-screen or farther away. Likewise, though, it also encourages more passive play against him in neutral, since you're looking for him to throw out an empty hand and then respond to it appropriately. We'll see where 6 changes. I think he's slightly reworked. Maybe he's slightly better than before. Maybe he's slightly worse. It's hard for me to tell.